The white two-story house in the suburbs of Hartford, Connecticut was the perfect symbol of an ideal home for Grace Miller. Every morning, she made it a habit to watch from the kitchen window as her 9-year-old son Tommy practiced riding his bicycle in the small garden. "Mom, look. This time I rode without falling." When Tommy's cheerful voice rang out, Grace couldn't help but smile. Her husband David worked as an accountant at a local accounting firm, and Grace herself worked as an insurance investigator at an insurance company in the same town. The two had been married for 10 years. "Good morning, Grace. Tommy's full of energy again today." When she turned around, her mother-in-law Dorothy was coming in through the front door with a smile. She lived nearby and came by almost every morning to check on her grandson. She was also knowledgeable about money management and was a reliable person who would thoughtfully help Grace and her husband with their household financial consultations. "Good morning. Thank you for always looking after Tommy," Grace answered while making coffee. Dorothy truly loved her grandson Tommy and happily took care of school pickups and drop-offs, as well as watching him when Grace was late from work. "Don't say such things. He's my precious grandson, so it's only natural. More importantly, David is early again today." "Yes, he seems busy with the end of the month. But I need him to take care of his health." Dorothy frowned with concern. "I've been worried lately that my son doesn't look well." "Is it work stress?" Grace agreed on that point. David was very responsible and often worked late into the night for his clients. Perhaps he was reaching his physical limits. Linda said the same thing. As a medical professional, she seems worried about him. David's sister Linda worked at the local general hospital and was always concerned about the family's health management. She had extensive medical knowledge and was a reliable person who never missed even slight changes in physical condition. "I'm really grateful to Linda. When we lay people don't understand something, she teaches us from a professional perspective." Dorothy nodded warmly. "That girl has been caring and liked taking care of people since she was little. It was natural for her to become a nurse." The front door opened, and Linda appeared. She was on her way to the hospital before her shift and stopped by every week at this time. "Good morning, Grace." "Mom. Has Tommy gone to school yet?" "Not yet. He's riding his bicycle in the garden." Linda checked on Tommy's condition through the window with the quick movements typical of a nurse. "He looks healthy, which is good. Children's physical conditions change quickly, so we must always watch them carefully." Grace was truly grateful for her sister-in-law's dedicated attitude. Linda was single and cherished Grace's family as if they were her own. "How is David doing?" Linda asked with concern. "He seems as busy as usual, but I think he's fine. But just to be safe, he should get a health checkup. Especially blood pressure and electrocardiogram. I can make a referral at the hospital where I work." Dorothy nodded in agreement. "That's right, Linda's absolutely right. Health is more important than anything." Grace felt warmth from their thoughtfulness. Working as an insurance investigator, she often saw families with weak bonds or relationships that had deteriorated due to money troubles. Because of that, she truly realized how fortunate it was that her own family was so united. "How about we all have a barbecue this Sunday?" Dorothy suggested. "The weather looks good, so let's make time for the whole family to spend together." "That's a wonderful idea. I think David would be happy too." Linda clapped her hands with joy. "I'll make a salad. I have a healthy recipe that the hospital nutritionist taught me." Tommy came running in from the entrance. "Grandma, Aunt Linda. I have art class at school today." Dorothy hugged her grandson. "Really? What are you going to make?" "It's a secret. But I'm going to make something really good, so look forward to it." Linda looked at her watch and stood up. "I have to go to the hospital soon. Tommy, do your best at school." "Okay, you do your best at work too, Aunt Linda." Grace saw them off at the entrance. The life surrounded by her mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and her beloved husband and son was the most precious treasure for her. Having seen various family problems as an insurance investigator, she deeply understood how valuable this peaceful, love-filled daily life was. "Tommy, let's eat breakfast and get ready for school." "Yes." Listening to her son's cheerful response, Grace sincerely wished that everyone in the family would spend another day healthy and happy. Several weeks later, Grace began to notice changes in David. Her husband tired more easily than before and seemed to have difficulty getting up in the morning. This coincided with the busy season at the accounting firm, and client demands were becoming more severe. "David, you look pale again this morning." Grace worriedly placed her hand on her husband's forehead. Although he had no fever, his skin looked paler than usual. "I'm fine. I'm just busy. Things will settle down next month." David forced a smile, but that smile lacked the brightness it used to have. He barely touched his breakfast and headed to the company with only coffee. That evening, Grace called her mother-in-law Dorothy. "Mother-in-law, I have something to discuss about David. He seems to be feeling unwell lately." "Oh my, that's concerning. What kind of symptoms?" Dorothy's voice immediately filled with worry. When it came to her son, her maternal instincts kicked in. "He tires easily and doesn't seem to have much appetite. I think it's work stress." "That is worrying. I'll come check on him tomorrow morning. It's painful to see my son pushing himself too hard." The next morning, Dorothy came as promised. After David left for work, she had a serious discussion with Grace. "Grace, when I was working at the bank, I saw colleagues with similar symptoms. Many people become ill due to stress, but if left untreated, it can become serious." Dorothy's advice based on her experience resonated deeply with Grace. Should he see a doctor after all? "Yes. Let's consult with Linda. She's a nurse, so she should know in detail what tests he should have." That evening, Linda stopped by after work. When she heard the story from Grace and Dorothy, her sister-in-law's expression became serious. "That is concerning. Based on what I'm hearing about his symptoms, several possibilities come to mind. It could be stress-related, but there might be other underlying conditions." Linda analyzed the situation with the calm judgment typical of a nurse. "Specifically, what might be considered?" Grace asked anxiously. "Blood pressure problems, heart abnormalities, or possibly blood disorders. In any case, I recommend getting a comprehensive health checkup as soon as possible." Dorothy said tearfully, "If something happens to my son, what would I do? He's the pillar of our family." "Mother-in-law, it'll be fine. I'm sure it's nothing serious." Grace comforted her mother-in-law, but inwardly she harbored similar anxieties. "I can introduce you to a trustworthy doctor at the hospital where I work," Linda suggested. "He's an internist and a very excellent doctor. He's also a former colleague of Mom's, so he might give special consideration." "That's reassuring. Thank you, Linda. We're family, so don't hesitate to consult about anything. We all love him." That night, Grace conveyed the family's concerns to David. "Everyone is worried about you. Mother-in-law and Linda too. I'm sorry. I know I'm causing worry, but I can't take time off work." David had a strong sense of responsibility and extremely disliked causing trouble for his clients. "But if you damage your health, it would all be for nothing, wouldn't it? For Tommy's sake, for mother-in-law's sake, and for my sake, please get examined." Seeing Gracie's serious expression, David finally gave in. "All right. I'll make time next week to go to the hospital." The next day, Linda made the hospital appointment. Her colleague, an internist, agreed to make special time for them. "The doctor is a former colleague of Mom's from her banking days and is very trustworthy," Linda explained. You can get not only a health checkup but also specialized tests if necessary, so don't worry. Dorothy also showed a relieved expression. Thanks to Linda, my son can be seen by a good doctor. Thank you so much. On the day of the examination, Grace adjusted her work schedule to accompany David. In the hospital waiting room, her mother-in-law and sister-in-law were also waiting together. I'm sorry for causing the family so much worry, David said. What are you saying? Dorothy held her son's hand. You're our precious family. It's natural for us to worry. Linda also nodded. Because we're family, we support each other. You've always helped us when we were in trouble too. The examination lasted several hours. Various tests were performed: blood tests, electrocardiogram, chest X-ray, abdominal ultrasound, and others. Thanks to Linda coordinating with the doctors as a nurse, everything proceeded smoothly. The results will be available next week, so don't overdo it until then. The attending physician explained kindly. Being a former colleague of Dorothy's, he was especially caring toward the family. Doctor, are my son's symptoms serious? Dorothy asked worriedly. I can't say anything definitive at this stage, but it was good that you came for testing early. If there is a problem, early detection gives us many treatment options. On the way home, the whole family stopped at a nearby cafe. This gives us a little peace of mind, Grace said. Yes, but I won't feel settled until we get the results, Dorothy replied. Linda maintained the composure typical of a medical professional as she said, whatever the results show, we'll support him as a family. That's what family bonds are about. When Tommy came home from school, he asked about his father's examination. Is Daddy okay? He's fine, Tommy. Daddy will get better, Grace hugged her son. Grandma and Aunt Linda are worried about Daddy too, right? That's right. We're all supporting Daddy together. That night, the whole family encouraged David. Dorothy cooked her son's favorite meal, and Linda gave professional advice about nutritious eating. I'm truly blessed with family, David said with deep feeling. Surrounded by such a loving family, I'm a lucky man. Grace wholeheartedly agreed with her husband's words. One day, David left for the accounting firm in the morning, and Grace concentrated on her investigative work at the insurance company. Tommy was at school, spending his day energetically as usual. Around 3 in the afternoon, Grace's cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello, is this Grace Miller? This is the emergency department at St. Mary's Hospital. Your husband, David Miller, has been in a car accident and has been brought to our hospital. Grace's heart felt like it stopped. Her hands trembled, and she almost dropped the phone. An accident? How serious are his injuries? We'll explain the details at the hospital. Please come immediately. He's currently receiving treatment in the ICU. The moment the call ended, Grace's mind went blank. David was in the ICU. She quickly explained the situation to her supervisor and left work early. While driving, she called her mother-in-law Dorothy with shaking hands. This is terrible. David has been in an accident. What? My son. Dorothy's voice trembled with shock. He's in the ICU at St. Mary's Hospital. Please come right away. I understand. I'll head there immediately too. Next, she called Linda. Fortunately, she was on duty. Linda, David has been in an accident. He's in the ICU at your hospital. I understand. I'll check the ICU right away. Grace, drive carefully and stay calm. When Grace arrived at the hospital, she hurried to the ICU. Dorothy was already there in the hallway, sitting in a chair and wiping tears with a handkerchief. Grace. I don't know about my son's condition yet. Linda is inside checking for us. Soon, Linda appeared with a heavy expression. Her face in the nurse's uniform had lost its usual brightness. He's stable, but he received a strong impact to his head. He's conscious, but tests are still continuing. Can we visit him? Grace asked. Right now, the doctor says short visits are possible. But be careful not to overstimulate him. The heavy doors of the ICU opened, and Grace went to her husband's bedside. David was wearing an oxygen mask and surrounded by various machines. Still, when he saw her, he weakly moved his hand. David, are you okay? He nodded slightly but tried to say something, moving his mouth. Because of the oxygen mask, his words couldn't be heard. At that moment, small footsteps could be heard in the hallway. When she turned around, Tommy was running toward them. Mom! Where's Dad? Tommy, why are you here? What about school? Grandma came to pick me up. I want to see Dad. Dorothy appeared after him, out of breath. I'm sorry, Grace. This child insisted on seeing his father. Linda consulted with the doctor, and a short visit for the child was permitted. Tommy approached his father's bedside and held David's hand with his small one. When David saw his son, he moved the oxygen mask slightly and whispered something. Tommy leaned in close to listen. A few minutes later, the nurse announced the end of visiting time. When they left the ICU, Tommy's behavior was clearly strange. Instead of his usual cheerful expression, his face was filled with fear. Tommy, what's wrong? What did you talk about with Dad? Tommy didn't answer and gripped Grace's hand tightly. That small hand conveyed trembling. Mom, Tommy said in a small voice. Dad told me not to trust the doctors. Grace was confused by her son's words. What are you saying? Tommy, with tears in his eyes, confessed something even more frightening. Actually, I heard Grandma and the doctor talking. About Dad. At that moment, Linda appeared. Tommy, so you were here. Mom is worried about you. Linda was clearly flustered and tried to pull Tommy away. However, Tommy desperately clung to Grace's clothes. Mom, listen. I accidentally heard Grandma and the doctor talking in the hospital hallway. They were saying bad things about Dad. Tommy, you must have misheard, Linda hurriedly interrupted. It's difficult medical talk for children, so you misunderstood. However, Tommy shook his head. No, it's not. Grandma said the insurance money will come in soon. And the doctor said, if we make it look like a treatment complication. Grace's blood ran cold. The words, insurance money, triggered her professional instincts. Tommy, tell me that story in detail again. Linda was clearly agitated. Grace, you shouldn't take a child's story seriously. He's confused from the shock. But I heard it clearly, Tommy insisted tearfully. They were talking about Dad dying. Dorothy noticed the conversation and approached. Oh my, Tommy was still here. Poor thing, he's confused from the shock. Her mother-in-law's expression was full of compassion, but Grace felt something was off. If Tommy's story was true, this kind grandmother's appearance would be an act. Mother-in-law, Tommy is saying strange things. Really? What kind of things? Dorothy's voice seemed to have a slight tension mixed in. About insurance money and treatment complications. A moment of silence flowed between Dorothy and Linda. To Grace, it was an unusual atmosphere that couldn't be overlooked. Oh my, poor thing. He must have heard adult conversation and misunderstood. Dorothy smiled kindly, but that smile seemed stiffer than before. Linda nodded in agreement. That's right, Grace. In medical settings, we discuss various scenarios. Tommy probably heard just part of it and misunderstood. However, in Grace's heart, alarm bells were ringing as an insurance investigator. From her experience handling numerous fraudulent insurance claims, she clearly sensed something abnormal in this situation. "Tommy, is it true that Dad told you don't trust the doctors?" "Yes, it's true." Dad gripped my hand and said it in a small voice. Linda and Dorothy exchanged glances. At that moment, Grace was certain. Her son's story was the truth. "I'm going to see David again." "But visiting hours are," Linda tried to stop her. "As a nurse, you could arrange special consideration, couldn't you?" Grace's words now contained suspicion. That night, Grace couldn't sleep. Tommy's testimony wouldn't leave her mind. Her experience as an insurance investigator strongly indicated the abnormality of this situation. She had never thought deeply about her husband's life insurance before, but suddenly became very concerned. Early the next morning, Grace began investigating David's insurance-related documents in the home study. While looking for life insurance documents from when they were first married, she found recently updated papers. Looking at the beneficiary section, Grace was horrified. The beneficiary had been changed from Grace to Dorothy. The change date was 3 months ago. David's signature was there, but something seemed wrong. The handwriting looked subtly different. "What is this?" Grace stared at the documents with trembling hands. Why had David secretly changed the beneficiary? And why to his mother instead of his wife? She quickly called a colleague at the insurance company. "Martha, I'm sorry to bother you with something personal, but could you introduce me to a handwriting analysis expert?" "Of course, Grace. But what's wrong?" "I'll explain later. I'm in a hurry right now." During lunch break, she met with a handwriting analysis expert. The comparison with David's past signatures confirmed Grace's suspicions. This signature has a high possibility of being forged. The pen pressure and letter angles are clearly different from the genuine ones. Grace's heart was confused with anger and sadness. Did her mother-in-law forge her son's signature? Having worked at a bank for many years, forging signatures wouldn't be difficult for Dorothy. That evening, Grace went to the hospital. David's condition was stable, but he still needed intensive care. Linda was attending as the nurse in charge. "Grace, he's getting a little better gradually. But we still can't be relieved." Grace harbored new suspicions about Linda's words. If Linda, in her position as a nurse involved in medical care, was a conspirator. "Linda, I'd like to talk to the attending physician. He's examining patients now, so I'll arrange time for you later." At that moment, she saw Dorothy talking with an unfamiliar man in the hallway. The man was wearing a doctor's white coat. Grace hid behind something and listened carefully. "Things are proceeding according to plan, aren't they, Dr. William?" Dorothy's voice could be heard. "Yes, Dorothy. In a few more days, we can make it look like a treatment complication." Linda is being cooperative too. Grace's blood froze. Tommy's testimony was true. "How much was the insurance money again?" the doctor asked. $500,000. "Even split 3 ways, it's a sufficient amount." "That's right. You helped cover up my medical malpractice, so I'll make sure this succeeds." Grace took out her cell phone with trembling hands and started recording. "Linda will handle the medication adjustments, right?" "Yes, that girl will perform perfectly as a nurse. My son's wife trusts the family completely, so she won't suspect anything." Still, the signature forgery was masterful. As expected from a former bank employee. 30 years of career isn't for nothing. But let's be more careful. I'm worried that grandson might say something unnecessary. No one believes a child's testimony. It's enough to explain that he's confused from shock. Grace recorded sufficient evidence. She quickly left the scene and headed to the police station. "My husband is about to be murdered." The police officer initially didn't believe Gracie's story. However, when she presented the recorded conversation and forged insurance documents, they understood the seriousness of the situation. "We'll start an investigation immediately. To ensure your husband's safety, let's transfer him to another hospital." That night, with police cooperation, David was emergency transferred to another hospital. Grace, along with police officers, waited for Dorothy, Linda, and the conspiring doctor. The next morning, all three were arrested. When Dorothy appeared at her son's hospital room, she was shocked to see the empty bed. "Where is my son?" Grace said calmly, "Your son is in a safe place." A police officer appeared and handcuffed Dorothy. "You're under arrest for fraud and attempted murder." Dorothy became distraught. "Grace, this is a misunderstanding. I'm a mother who loves her son. Would a loving mother forge her son's signature and target his life insurance money?" Linda was also arrested simultaneously. She tried to continue acting until the end. "Grace, this is wrong. Aren't we family? Family doesn't exchange a brother's life for money." The conspiring doctor, William Hartman, was also arrested. He had committed medical malpractice in the past and had asked Dorothy to cover it up. As repayment for that favor, he had participated in this plan. During police interrogation, the full scope was revealed. Dorothy had used her knowledge from her banking days to skillfully forge her son's signature. Linda was supposed to handle medication adjustments as a nurse, and Dr. Hartman was to create a death certificate as a treatment complication. The three had planned to split the $500,000 life insurance payout and were trying to murder David. The traffic accident was a perfect opportunity for them. "Why did you do such a thing?" Grace asked Dorothy. "Money," Dorothy answered while crying. "Life after retirement was difficult. But it's true that I really loved my son. If you loved him, you wouldn't try to take his life." Linda also confessed. "I had debts. I was about to be sued for medical malpractice and needed money." However, what shocked Grace most was that these three people had been planning for a long time and had continued to deceive her as family. Without Tommy's brave testimony, David would have been killed. Her 9-year-old son had saved his father. "Mom, is Dad really okay?" "Yes, Tommy. Dad will get better. You saved him." Grace hugged her son. This child's pure heart and courage had saved the family. David recovered smoothly at the new hospital and regained clear consciousness after a week. When he learned the truth, he was deeply shocked but recovered with the support of his wife and son's love. "We have a real family," David said, gripping Grace's hand. "You and Tommy, the best family possible." A year later, new flowers were blooming profusely in the Miller family garden. David had completely recovered and was living a healthier lifestyle than before. There were almost no after-effects from the accident, and he had begun to cherish time with his family more. The court verdict was severe. Dorothy Miller received a 7-year prison sentence for fraud and attempted murder. Her crime of abusing her knowledge as a former bank employee to forge her son's signature was viewed seriously. Linda Miller received a 5-year prison sentence for conspiracy, plus permanent revocation of her nursing license. Her actions contrary to medical ethics as a healthcare professional brought significant social sanctions. Dr. William Hartman received an 8-year prison sentence for medical ethics violations and attempted murder, and his medical license was also permanently revoked. His crime of committing further crimes to cover up past medical malpractice was severely condemned as an act of betrayal against the entire medical community. All three appealed, but the evidence was irrefutable, and the verdicts were confirmed. Social reintegration after release was expected to be extremely difficult, and it would be impossible to regain their former positions or trust. Particularly for Dorothy and Linda, isolation in the local community was inevitable. "Mom, aren't Grandma and the others coming back anymore?" One day, Tommy asked Grace. For her 9-year-old son, understanding the family's betrayal was difficult. "That's right, Tommy. But we have real family, don't we? Your father, me, and you. A family that loves each other. Grace answered while hugging her son. She had learned deeply this past year that even with blood relations, without love there is no true family, and that daily trust and affection are proof of family. I'm glad I could protect Dad, Tommy said proudly. Your courage saved Dad. You really did well. David also gently patted his son's head. If you hadn't been there, I wouldn't be here anymore. You're a true hero. Grace's experience as an insurance investigator had ironically saved her own family. Having seen many insurance frauds professionally, she was able to notice the fraud even among family members. I never thought that what I learned at work would be necessary to protect my own family, Grace told David. It was your expertise, Tommy's courage, and the bond between the three of us that got us through. Since the incident, the Miller family's bond had become much deeper than before. They felt the strength of a family truly united by love rather than superficial blood relations. Grace continued her work at the insurance company, but through this experience, she came to understand the importance of family more deeply. She was also able to approach the families she met in her investigations with greater empathy. Family is really about accumulating small acts of love every day. At dinner one evening, Grace said thoughtfully. The relationship with her mother-in-law and sister-in-law had certainly seemed ideal on the surface. However, there was no real love there, only hidden greed for money. That's right. The words, because we're family, only have meaning when there's love, David agreed. Since his father's accident, Tommy had begun to value family more than before. It became his habit to tell his parents, "I love you," every morning. We're a real family, aren't we? That's right, Tommy. We're a real family that loves each other. Outside the window, the sunset was shining beautifully. They had once thought they were a large family of 4, but now their small family of 3 was much happier. They had learned this year that heart connections are more important than blood connections. Dorothy and Linda were probably spending lonely days in prison. The price of betraying family for money was greater than imagined. Meanwhile, the Miller family was living love-filled days. Let's make next year an even more wonderful year, Grace said. Yes, let's live peaceful days where we never doubt our family again, David replied. The Miller family, having learned what true family love is, would continue to be bound by loving ties. Even with blood relations, without love there is no true family. But with love, any difficulty can be overcome. That was the most important lesson they had learned.